All right, everyone. Hello. I think I know most of you, but for those who don't know me, my name is Karen Cornelson, and I'm the manager of marketing and communications at Cast. And I'm also one of the organizers of the Kootenai Pitch Competition. So in this masterclass today, we have mostly Kootenai Pitch Competition contestants, and then I think we have some VAP clients in here. So welcome everyone, and thanks for coming. To the Kootenai Pitch Competition contestants, I just want to say a huge thank you for getting me everything I needed in the last week and before Christmas. I know it's a lot. It is a really busy month, so thank you for responding so quickly to everything. I'm really excited to introduce you to Paul Brassard. He's with Volition Advisors. They're a sponsor of the Kootenai Pitch Competition, and they are our dear, dear partners. You'll have one-on-one sessions with Paul starting next week. He's amazing. The last contestants had nothing but incredible things to say about him and how much he helped them with their pitch. So today, Paul will be doing the pitch and presentation masterclass for you. Please feel free to use the Q&A. If you have questions, you can put it in there at any time and Paul will get to them. And then you can also use the chat as well. So thanks everyone for being here. And thank you, Paul, for doing this. And yeah, I hope you all have fun.
Much fun will be had, I am sure. So welcome everybody. Glad to be here with you. Thanks so much for joining me and for joining Cast. Congratulations on your entrepreneurial journey and congratulations on getting to this point. I mean, always amazing to meet new entrepreneurs. And I look forward to meeting most of you at the upcoming coaching sessions as well as the pitch finale event. So really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, let's get you all prepared for the VAP clients as well. Karen's just reminding me that some of them are VAP clients as well. This is to help you too, so don't worry. That's why I was saying some of you I'll be meeting very soon. So in the meantime, let's get you all prepared and understanding how to best build a pitch and presentation. So I'm just hoping that somebody can give me a thumbs up that they can see this. Maybe Karen can just give me a quick. Yep, perfect. Awesome. Okay, great. So welcome everybody to the Pitch Foundations Masterclass. So starting off, I'm just going to introduce myself. Karen did a fantastic job, but I'll just give a little bit more background of who I am. So particularly, I'm a 20-year entrepreneur, actually, as of this past October. Along with that, I have about 14, 15 years of pitching and fundraising experience. So all of that has culminated into me being today a master pitch and presentation coach. Much of my day-to-day in working with clients is in a lot of helping them on what's next, fundraising prep strategy, and then their pitches and presentations, particularly for investment in most cases, but not always. Pretty much whatever their pitch or presentation is for. Might be for competitions or anything along those lines. As Karen mentioned, I am a co-founder and managing partner and the lead advisor at Volition. Volition in and of itself elevates entrepreneurship through skill-based training, events, and coaching for the global startup ecosystem and its supporters. How we do that is through boot camps and workshops. For example, we do master classes as well, as you're attending today. We have unique pitch and startup events. We have our Amplify event, our regular pitch events, pitch masterminds, and we provide expert one-on-one coaching and advisory services with entrepreneurs as well. Now, previous to COVID, we had expanded from Vancouver, where we originally started, and over the last 2.5 years to Calgary, Seattle, Amsterdam, Lisbon, Dublin. Now virtually, silver lining, I guess, to all of this is we've expanded now to even more places virtually and are now working with programming partners similar to that of Cast in Albania, which is one I never would have thought I would say. We're going to be starting with Athens in Greece in March and many other places around the world. So we're really excited and happy to work with entrepreneurs everywhere and be part of their journey towards success. So in today's session, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the pitch mindset. That's the very first stage. So really that's going to be talking about why are we pitching, what is the purpose of it, that kind of stuff. We're also going to talk about pitch structuring, which is extremely important in building our pitches. Now at Volition, as I mentioned, with all the experience that I have over the years of pitching and presenting, working with clients and working on my own pitches and presentations, but also working with investors, be it at angel level or VC level, and understanding what they're looking for, what the audiences are looking for, that has culminated in us building a structure that we actually use to teach to clients and to teach to people like yourselves on how to structure a pitch and presentation so that you make sure, as it says there, to tick all the boxes, as it were. In addition, at the very end, I'm going to, something that's come up obviously now with COVID and this whole situation, I've got a few little virtual pitch tips for you at the very end, because obviously a lot of pitching now, almost all of it is done exclusively, at least for the time being, virtually. So that will help you in that journey as well. Okay, Karen's just reminding everybody to use the Q&A. That's perfect. So yeah, please, to that effect, as Karen has said in the chat, yeah, don't hesitate to post into the Q&A if you've got a question. I will usually wait till afterwards if I can to answer all the questions, but please don't hesitate to post your questions in there. So first and foremost, let's start with the pitch mindset. So what I find most commonly is most people come into pitches on kind of a transactional frame of mind. And what this means and what I mean by that is they're coming in with the idea of like, I'm pitching to raise funds, right? There's even some people I've met over the years that actually are coming into a pitch scenario, be it a pitch event or they're pitching to an investor or whatever that might be. They're coming into the situation almost anticipating that they're going to pitch and the investor's just going to drop everything they're doing, and they're just like, oh my Lord, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And they're going to write them a check right there. Well, the reality is that Dragon's Den, Shark Tank, if you watch any of those aren't real. That's made for TV. That's for entertainment. In real life, I've seen countless pitches. I see probably about 7 to 12 a week. And that's not meant to brag, it's just giving a fact. And the reality is that in all of the years that I've been watching pitches, only once out of all of the pitches I've ever watched has somebody actually had a check given to them at an event. And it was a much later stage pitch of Angel Forum where they actually were there to pitch for money and investors were kind of prepared to invest. So more on that later because it's actually an example that I'm going to use today with you. So what I want to say is that we want to try to get out of that mindset and reframe our mind of getting out of the transactional, like I'm here, give me money. If you don't give me money, you're of no use to me. That's not really a great position to be in. And it can come off, depending on how you pitch, it can come off sometimes a little bit desperate. What I can tell you through my years of experience, both for myself and working with clients and with investors, what I would say in almost all cases, the better approach is to approach it as if you're in it to build relationships. You're in it to build connections, increase your network, increase your exposure to network. And realistically, the more valuable your network is and the larger it is, the better those connections are. That when you are looking to fundraise or whatever the ask is that you have, whether it's looking for a new team member or customers, really what you're trying to do is to build a connection and build trust. So more on that in just a bit, but let's move away from the whole transactional idea and more of an ongoing value. So presenting who you are and what value you provide. So in reframing your pitch, what we have to think of is that your pitch is an opportunity. Now, I know you might be like, well, yeah, of course it is, Paul, but what do you mean by that? So let's talk about that a little bit more. So the opportunity here when you're pitching in front of an audience and you're presenting, whether it's, people that are potential team members, partners, investors, whatever that audience is, the no matter who it is, your pitch is an opportunity to generate intrigue. In other words, kind of whet their appetite for more, and generate trust, right? So there's a few things to this. So if we're talking from the aspect of an investor, especially for early stage companies, as I understand that most of you are, in most cases for early stage entrepreneurs, early stage companies, what you may not know is that investors are not getting into it to necessarily invest in the business of it, right? What they're really investing, almost every single one will tell you, if you ask them, what are you investing in? Why are you investing? Almost every single one will tell you that they're investing in the people. They're investing in the person or the people or the team, right? Because it's been proven time and time again that you know, teams and people have the ability to figure things out. Things like pivots happen. The general business will pivot 3 to 7 times in its lifetime before you truly figure it out and get true product market fit. That's on average. That's not in all cases, but in general averages. So it's really like investors looking for that figure it outness, that perseverance, that resilience, right? These characteristics and capabilities to get through it. They're looking for things like your core values, your why. Why are you doing this? Because when times get tough, are you just going to give up, or because you're so connected to it? I know a lot of people talk about the passion. I'm not so convinced about that in terms of more of it being connected to your why and your value and the value you provide. So with that, that's really what they're looking for. Is they're looking for that. Investors invest in people over business all the time, because the expectation is that they'll figure that part out, the latter part. So really, with that said, if we're getting away from the transactional mindset, then a lot of this is about securing a second conversation with the idea that you're not going to walk into a competition or an angel forum or whatever that might be, that people are just going to, oh, I'm writing you a check right now. That's never really going to happen. The chances are very, very slim that that's going to happen. And that's not to say because you're not doing something amazing. And that's not to say because you're not incredible. That's just not how it works. So what you really want to do is remember that your pitch and presentation is an opportunity to secure a second conversation. Now, to do that, you need to try to have several things in your corner. You want to try to be memorable. You need to clearly, concisely convey what it is that you're doing so that you can hopefully whet the appetite of people in the audience. And yeah, you're not going to be for everyone. That's just the reality. There's a lot of reasons that you might not be fit for somebody. If it's an investor, maybe they've got something in their portfolio already that they can't invest in you because they've already got a competitor in theirs or a direct or indirect. Maybe you're just not their thing. Maybe that they don't invest in that type of business. There's a lot of reasons for it, but you can still build connections, and you never know who they know. Building trust and connections. I've had people say, yeah, look, I can't invest in your business but I know so-and-so and I know and so-and-so. I really like you. How about I make you some introductions? Would you be open to that? Yeah, absolutely. Of course, for sure. And warm intros beat everything, as I'm sure you guys probably know. And your last but not least, your pitch is an opportunity, as I was mentioning before, to increase exposure, but really increase visibility. So to get you out there. And it's really, let's talk about the confidence that it can instill, the ability. I know there's a lot of people that, sometimes are quite afraid. I work with a lot of clients that when they're first starting out, they're very fearful of getting in front of an audience and pitching in front of people. And it can be, I understand it can be very scary when you're building this thing you're proud of, and it's kind of like your baby, right? You want to show off the baby, but now you're kind of shy about it a little bit in the sense of like, what if they don't like it? Or what if, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. But You know what the thing is that I've realized over the years is the reality is if somebody is there to watch pitches, if we're talking about a pitch situation, a pitch competition, a pitch forum, angel forum, the people in the audience are generally there to cheer you on. They're there to cheer everybody on. And look, if they're going to judge what you're doing, that's their problem. So don't think of it that way. Think of it as an opportunity for you to build those connections, build trust, increase exposure and visibility, and get your name out there and build those connections. So, how do we do all of this? So, as I mentioned before, the experience I have over the years, along with working with clients, our team has built a structure called PSOIAS, which is an acronym, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let's talk about the reasons behind structure. So, of course, in this case, I can't see any of you, but I'm going to guess largely just like if I was to teach this in a class in person. Usually, I would ask the question of, is there anybody in the room here that is a robot? Because I don't want to offend any robots in the room. Now, the reality is we're still not at the point yet that robots have infiltrated and are in our midst and pitching and fundraising. So the answer is likely no. And being that there's no robots in the room, then my expectation from that point should be that nobody here should be scripted, right? The honest truth is no audience, especially investors, wants to hear somebody come up onto a stage, so to speak, whether it be virtual or in person, and have it be a completely scripted pitch that sounds something like, hello, my name is Paul. I've been building a thing and it is going great and I can make money and I need your money to make more money. Like there's nothing interesting about that, and it's not memorable. It's not conveying who you are. It's not building a connection with the people in the audience. So the reality is that I have found over the years the best pitches are the ones where people are themselves. They convey who they are. They convey their why and their value. And I know this all might sound like a bit frilly, but honestly, after many years of doing this, it's actually very true. It's really what investors are looking for is, why are you doing this? Especially at the early stages. Why are you doing this? So being less scripted really goes really well. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't have structure. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. But when you have a structure, you actually can be less scripted in terms of repeating word for word a memorized script. That actually can get you in trouble. And the reason you can get you in trouble is I see that all the time where people will try to memorize word for word. And then what they're doing is they're standing on stage or in a virtual environment and they're going like this. So my name is Paul and I have a company. I started building it. Oh, wait, no, I mean, right. And you start hearing these little glitches almost where they're trying to remember what they exactly wrote down in their script. Well, the difference is if you can have a refined structure, which is what I'm going to teach you today, now you can always know where you are in that structure. And the structure that I'm going to show you will help you refine exactly where you're at and what part you're talking about at that point. So you don't have to worry about the script so much, because the things that you're going to be talking about in that structure, you should know about your business inherently. Just like if somebody was to walk into a room, I know it's COVID, but if we were in a physical room and I was to walk in and say, who are you? You would say, well, my name is so and so. Oh, what do you do? Right? It's the common, even thinking of a simple structure, be like who, what, where, why, when, how. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? Why do you do it? When did you start? How can I help? Right? That's a really super simple structure. That's actually how you can build like a simple elevator pitch. So if you think about it, if I ask you those questions, I'm sure for any of you, if I was to ask any of you those questions, you could easily answer. And that's the idea behind the structure I'm going to teach you today with the PSOIAS pitch methodology. The additional benefits to having this structure is that when you're able to tell a story, when you're able to have a structure and not be super scripted, you're able to maintain attention and have a good flow, right? So when you have people listening to you, it's not jumpy and all over the place and you're losing the audience. You want to make sure that you have their attention and that you're keeping their attention and not, having them fall asleep with like a hello, my name is this and I should do this, because that's not going to help you in the long run. Especially, let's say it's in a competition. I know with the cast competition, it's 4 companies, but I've been to ones before that is like 12. I think the biggest one I've ever been to is 18 companies pitching. By the end, it's really hard to remember everybody, but there's certain ones that you will remember because of the story, because of the connection, because there's something particular about them. And it might not even be the numbers, it might not be the business itself, it might be just even the story itself that they told that you'll remember, like, oh, there was this guy, so on and so forth. And then the last one is to make sure the structure is really, really good, because in the investor world, I'll just tell you, is there's a common saying that they use, which is that they're looking for people to tick the boxes. My friend Thelzel, who's from Vantech, which you may or may not have heard of, it's Western Canada's oldest and largest angel network. She says all the time, she says either tick the boxes, another phrase she uses is fill the buckets, right? Which is essentially the same thing. And what she's looking for when she's listening to a pitch is, these little boxes that you're ticking. Are you talking about the things that she's looking for in a opportunity for investment? Now, those things are I'll get back to in a little bit. But again, some of those things is, do I trust the person? Are they clear and concise? Do they know what they're talking about? Do they understand the value? This is a business, so does the business know how to make money? But I'll come back to that in a little bit. So the structure is really good. And talking about memorability, up on the screen, there's a reason for the picture that I have on the screen. So that is Andre Mate from a company called Robox Tools, which is a really cool company. They have created the world's first smart drill, and their plan is to build a suite of smart tools. You can look them up, roboxtools.com, I think it is. They have a Kickstarter. Robox is ROBBOX. And it's really cool. We originally met them through one of our pitch events. We actually originally met his dad first. His dad started coming out and pitching, very engineer, inventor type. So, very like hard set on his words and knew exactly what he was building, but didn't know exactly how to pitch and present it. So we started working with them. He brought in his son, and, they had a great story. They worked in a machine shop together, and they kept having trouble with the tools they were having, and the batteries running out, and having to swap tools and all this stuff. And it just led them to the idea of like, what if we had a tool where you could combine the smartness of aspects that we have today, but then also tools that have swappable batteries and components. So you can basically have like a one size fits all tool with multiple batteries that all fit in the same tools. So fast forward a few years, and now they're launching it, and it's amazing. But they are a good example, because they were in a competition once after we had worked with them on their pitch and presentation with 13 other companies. And lo and behold, it was actually at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and they ended up winning. And part of the reason was that the people said that out of all the companies, they were the most memorable. They were the most clear and concise. They understood the story. They understood the why, right? So if we hear all of those things, I've been doing this long enough, that's the common things I hear over and over and over. So there must be something to it. So to all that effect, I'm going to bring you back to sort of like elementary, high school for a second. So what you might see on the screen, or what you're seeing on the screen now, is something you might recall from those times, which is called the general story arc. Okay, which is intro, setting the scene, into rising action, climax, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the story arc there. Now, we all learned that in school many, many years ago for me. And this is very common. This is common in books we read, TV shows, movies. It's existed for a long time. It's been in Shakespeare. It's always, it's been something that's been around for a long time. And so when people don't use this general story arc, It might be the situation where you might come out of a movie and you hear people saying something like, yeah, it was good, but I guess I didn't really understand it. It was really jumpy. It jumped all around, or I didn't really get it. Um, and it's usually because whatever the script writer or the story writer didn't really follow the general story arc. They kind of jumped all over the place. Now, guess what? The same can happen for pitches. I've seen and heard a lot of jumpy or bouncy pitches over the years. And it sounds sort of like, hi, my name is Paul. This year we're going to do this much in money. But when I started, I did this. And now the solution is with this many customers. But let me tell you about the solution. And actually what I'm looking for, but this is how we make money, right? It's like, it's all over the place. And honestly, most investors don't have a very good attention span, generally, is what I've found. Because they're busy. They're thinking about a lot of different deals. They're thinking about a lot of different things. So even when they're, there in the audience, they're not necessarily always fully paying attention. So what happens is you can lose them very easily. It's easy to lose audience members. So if you jump all over the place, you're making that even more possible. So if you have a structure like what I'm showing you here, um, then it's much easier for the audience to maintain attention and follow the flow of the story. So I guess what I'm saying is, let's work on building your pitch and presentation into a narrative or a narrative story. And that's what we've built our structure based around, off of my experience over the years. And this actually started with when I started pitching years ago, when somebody said, Paul, we need you to pitch our company. And I had no idea how to do it. So I had to come up with a way to do it. And that's where this started. So again, why is story so important? So going back to that trust part, creating an emotional attachment or emotional connection. And again, the memorability of it can really give you a winning pitch at the end of the competition, or the end of the forum, or whatever it may be. So it's really about these things, the story, over and over. I can tell you, I have a lot of evidence for this. At Volition, we just had our 100th event celebration in December, our 100th pitch event. We started doing them in January 2016. And over and over again in the chat or at live events when we had them pre-COVID, over and over again, we would have people say, oh, yeah, your pitch was amazing because I really remembered it. I loved the story you're told. I really connected with it, right? And that's really a large part of what it's about. Once you bridge that gap, like I said, then it's more just about explaining what the business is and how you plan on making money. But we all don't know for sure. That's the figure it out ofness part. There's no crystal ball to making money for sure. That's something you figure out over time, especially for early stage entrepreneurs, generally speaking. So all of this is formed into, actually, I'm going to go back to this really quickly because again, the picture on this slide is on purpose. And that is Maxine from a company called Pick My Brain, who started pitching with us. I think it was about 3 years ago. And she's a great example of coming in, telling a story. When she first started, she didn't really know the business of what she was building. She didn't know exactly what it was going to turn into, how much money it was going to make. She didn't have clear projections necessarily. She had an idea of it all, but what she had was an incredible story and connection to her values and her why. And in her case, she came out and was like, over the years, I've been working with a lot of people. I hear the common phrase of, I just want to pick your brain. And I got tired of giving away my time for free. And I felt like the future of work is really about selling knowledge, people's unique knowledge, um, for a value, just like you would sell a physical item. So why not? And so what she said is, I'm building a platform called Pick My Brain, where you can go in and book people and pay for their time and knowledge. Moreover, their knowledge, because that's the value of what they're selling. So you're getting away from these conversations of like, oh, I just want to pick your brain. Can I buy you a coffee for, an hour of your time, which is, kind of a strange conversation to have sometimes. So that was kind of her story of where that came from. She told her story, and um, it connected with a lot of people. She created an immense reaction that people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. I really want to get involved or understand more, or get to know Maxine. And now fast forward to now, and she's doing really, really well. She's figured out her business model. She's had that figure it outness, and now she's raising and closing around and building up her company internationally, which has been incredible to see. So that all leads to this structure. So out of that narrative storytelling structure, the general story arc, at Volition, we created, as I called it, the Pasoyas pitch building method, which stands for problem, solution, opportunity, and the why is the variable you or the team, because really the opportunity is nothing without you, at least for sure at the beginning. Right? Because it's who you are. You started it for a reason. It's connected to your why. It's connected to your values, and you're the one that's going to make it happen. There's a common saying in the investor world, which is why you, why this, why now, right? So that goes hand in hand, kind of with that, and then ending with your ask, and it's all connected together with a story. So that's the Pasoyas structure. Now let's talk about that. And I mentioned before that, one of the things we want to make sure we do is tick the boxes or fill the buckets. Well, the cool thing about this structure that we've discovered, we've been using this now for about 5 or 6 years, working with clients and angel investors, and all sorts of stakeholders. And the response and feedback has been really, really good. We know it works. We've had many clients that have won competitions. We teach this in classes all around the world, and we know it works. That's the feedback we've received. So we want to make sure we tick all the boxes. And the luck with this structure, now the luck, I guess, by design, is that it ticks all those boxes. It fills the buckets. So first and foremost is the problem. So starting off with the problem. Now, quite often what I'll recommend to people is that if you're at early stages, a great way to open a pitch is to start with the story that, if you can lead that into the problem, right? So remembering, if we go back here for just one moment, if we remember for a moment what the general entrepreneurial story, what we can see, if you guys go back now after I talk about all this, and you watch something like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, a lot of times the general entrepreneurial story is something along the lines of, I was doing a thing happened, so I built a solution to that thing, and started talking to other people along the way and discovered that they had a similar issue, and now people want to buy it, or they want that solution as well. So now I need money to make more of that solution, right? So that's the general entrepreneurial story. Now, if you actually hear that, it actually follows that general story arc, right? It introduces the character, the people, the problem. The rising action is like, I created a solution. The opportunity, of course, if we think from the perspective of an investor or stakeholder, the opportunity for them is return on investment. How do you make money? How does the business grow? And then, of course, the ask is the resolution. What do you need to make it all happen? So, of course, the opportunity has to include you. So coming back to this, we want to start off with the story and the problem, and making sure that the problem we're solving, we need to kind of show evidence that this is a real problem that needs addressing. So we can evidence this pretty simply by saying, I've talked to this many people, it happened to me, then I surveyed, I did customer discovery, I've talked to others, or I've already pre-sold some things, or I built a quick prototype or beta, and here's the response and feedback, or anything simple along those lines. But it's important to prove that the problem that you are addressing really actually is a real problem. So why would people want it? Over and above yourself and maybe your mom, right? Like I've heard pitches like that before, where it's sort of like, yeah, my mom loves it. And it's like, but who else have you talked to? Oh, I haven't talked to anybody else yet, but I think it's great. Um, that's not really enough proof per se. So you want to make sure that you're proving that. Now, that being said, I would always recommend, of course, trying to avoid over explaining. Now, um, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Seinfeld. I'm old enough that for me, Seinfeld references always are great. But the ultimately there's one of the episodes that's like, you got to see the baby. Well, the reality is that building a startup, building a company is much like having a baby. You want everybody to see the pictures, you want to see everybody see it walk and talk, and you want to tell everybody about everything the baby's doing. Now, that's the challenge with a pitch, is you're not there to tell the audience every single little thing. I know it's important to you, and as by rights it should be. You should be proud of it. But the audience hasn't actually earned the right to learn and know everything about the business. Everything's not important at this point. And that can be a challenge because for us as entrepreneurs, everything's important. It's hard for us to be objective and subjective. But do your best to keep the problem statement as simple as possible. Most of you probably know the term keep it stupid simple. Try to do that with the problem statement. Try to keep it as simple as possible so that people get it relatively quickly. Test it out with people before you start pitching. Test out that problem statement and see if people get it that don't know what you're building, but they go, oh, I get it, right? Try to avoid over explaining. In a general pitch, if a pitch is, say, 5 minutes, that's sort of an average in a lot of cases. Really, the problem statement, the problem section should be usually no more than about 30 seconds or so, just to give you an idea. Now, into the solution, you want to make sure that your solution actually solves the problem that you've stated. Now, interestingly enough, this structure that we've built, this narrative, there's a reason the general story arc works. And there's another reason that this structure works as well, is that it also works with psychology. So for most people, if you present a problem, first and foremost to them, if you say, here's a problem, then usually most people's response will be, then what's the solution? That's what they want to hear inherently next. So it's very natural. So why not provide them naturally what they're listening and looking for, right? Instead of telling them, oh, and I can make so much money. We're not there yet. We haven't got to that point yet. We haven't built up the story. We haven't built up to the climax of the opportunity. Now, one way that I always recommend, especially if your solution or your product or service is a bit more complex. Let's say it might be an enterprise level software solution, or it's something that is complex B2B solution. The great way to do it is to actually tell the solution from your customer's perspective. So for example, you might say, I've built this software, and when my customer starts using it, or let's say even if you have a customer, why not say how they use it? So customer uses it, even if you don't have a customer, pretend you do. When they're using it, this is what happens for them. How does it change their world? How does it affect them? What is the outcome that they get from it? That can be incredibly powerful, because now for the audience, especially an investor, and especially if you do have a customer that's using it, the assumption is look, if you can get one customer, you can get two. And if you can get two, you can get four. But if you know the value that you're providing, that value proposition, and they're receiving it, and you can show that, then the idea is that you can get those customers or get more of them. So that's really what you want to do, is you want to show and don't tell it. Show it. Show the evidence of what the value is that your customer gets. And then into the opportunity. Now, many of you at some point or another may have done business model canvases. You're going to be familiar with, depending on which format you did, you might have unfair advantage, you might have unique value proposition, all those kinds of things. Those things are all very valuable for building a pitch, for sure, because it's going to build up some of the language that you're going to use in the future, that you're going to test. But ultimately, the business, the money, the traction, and the return are really the opportunity, including you and the team. You're part of that opportunity. Again, going back to, if you remember, especially for early stage, we're talking from investors' perspective, the opportunity is that they're investing in you. Yeah, they want a return on their investment, but nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know in early stage investments. I mean, it's going to take, on average, about 7 years before we see a return. So how would we know? A lot can happen between then. COVID, this, that, who knows, right? There's a lot of variables. But if I know I can trust the people that I'm investing in, and they have that resilience, that perseverance, and figure it outness, then that's what I'm investing in, and they'll figure out the business part. But of course, they should have an idea of who they're providing it to, what the business model is. Ultimately, they're looking for a plan. Do you have a plan to execute, and can you execute the plan? So in the opportunity section, some of the things they're looking for sure, are things like traction, relevance in the market. That's going to be market comparisons, competition, again, unique differentiator, unique value proposition, or whatever you want to call it. Any kind of unfair advantages? Do you have protectable IP? Do you have something that's patentable? Is there a secret sauce? That secret sauce could be a set of code or an algorithm that you created if it's a software. That's all valuable stuff that goes hand in hand with building up the opportunity. Now, I just want to touch on the word traction for a moment, because some people get caught up on that. And what they get caught up on is, I've had some people say to me, well, but Paul, I don't have any revenue yet, so I don't have any traction. But what I want you guys to remember is, traction in and of itself, if you think about traction, it doesn't always have to do with money. The word in of itself, if you think about a car or a motorbike or whatever, when those tires are hitting the road, when you're getting traction and propelling your vehicle forward, your startup, your company is a vehicle. It's a vehicle to do business and make money and build an opportunity and provide value. So the vehicle in this case, the tire hitting when they say the rubber hits the road, that's traction. So anything, honestly, especially at early stages, anything that's propelling your business forward, doesn't have to be just revenue, is traction. So this could be people you've signed up to an interest list, letters of interest, customer discovery. It could be that you've talked to 500 people and your response rate is 80% and higher. You've sold some early prototypes, you've got some beta customers. All of that stuff and more is all forms of traction. So anything that's pushing your business forward. And then the last one there is your cocktail napkin economics, which I'm not going to get too deeply into, but essentially is the simple numbers that have to do with your business. And there's no one size fits all, because it's depending on the type of business. But this may include things like, the obvious one is revenue over time, numbers over time. It's usually some sort of measuring stick type numbers. This might be things like retention rate, cost of acquisition, depending on what stage you're at. For earlier stage companies, you probably won't know things like cost of acquisition yet, all that kind of stuff. But just the simple numbers that you would essentially write down on a cocktail napkin, that would fit on a literal cocktail napkin. Those are sort of the important numbers to you, and that's probably important numbers to the investor or the audience as well. And then last but not least, into the ask, right? So you've built up this story. You've built up, there's a problem, I've made a solution, or I'm making a solution. There's an opportunity behind this. Here's the proof of that. I've started assembling a team. This is the plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we make money, or how we build the company. This is the traction we have so far. You've built this up. And now, naturally, again, what the audience or an investor is going to be listening for is, great, what do you need to make it all happen, right? What is it that you need to hit the next milestone, the next marker? And that therefore is your ask. So what is your ask? Now there's a structure to this. The structure we use is called M&M, not the rapper. I don't really think he's relevant anymore. But this is M&M as in mentors, network, money. Now, I am not suggesting that you need to have an ask for every one of those things. What I'm saying is in exactly that order, M&M. You decide what's the most important for you at this time. If you're really early stage and you need a mentor, then ask for a mentor. If you're at the stage of network, which could be anything like customers, partners, connections to investors, potential team members, whatever it is, advisors, whatever it is you need in terms of network, if that's where you're at, then that's your ask. And if you're at the point where you're looking for money, you're actually you're at a fundraising stage, and you're asking for money, then ask for money. Just remember that what I have found over the years is that the power of network can quite often actually be more valuable than money. What I would say overall is gauge your audience. So of course, if you're going to an investor event and you're raising a round, then yeah, you should probably ask for money. You should probably have your ask be, I'm raising this to achieve the stuff I talked about. If you're going to a competition where you're not sure if there's going to be investors in the room, but you have other needs like advisors or connections to customers, then you can put two. That's okay. You could say, like, I'm looking for connections to customers and we're raising this much. But really, if it's not purely an angel investor forum or you're raising money and you're in front of investors, if the audience is general, then you might go more particularly skewed towards my ask being something connecting to my network. Now, what I would ask you though is whatever that ask is, please be specific. There's two pieces of this. Don't be afraid to ask. Actually, there's three. Don't be afraid to ask. Always have an ask, and be specific. Now, I'm going to touch on those 3 points for just a moment. So some people are afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst that's going to happen is they say no. That's okay. The faster you get through the no's, the quicker you get to the yes. Because the more you discover about yourself, the more you discover about why they said no. If you can find out why is it a no. Oh, well, I wasn't sure about this. Okay, cool. Now, just like entrepreneurship, you iterate, you improve, you eventually get to a yes. Always have an ask. Always. I've had scenarios over the years where people don't have an ask in their pitch, and then the feedback to them will be like, well, you should have an ask. Why don't you have an ask? It always comes up. For those who don't have one at competitions. In investor forums, the investors' first question they'll always ask is, why don't you have an ask? What's your ask? What do you need to make this all happen? I've heard the answer before many times, which is, oh, well, I'm not raising, so I don't have an ask. Well, so I'm sorry to say this, but if you're an entrepreneur and not a wantrepreneur, if you're building a company and you're truly an entrepreneur, you always have an ask, meaning you always need something to help you in your business. Anything. There's going to be something that you could use. You're telling me you're building a company and you have customers and you don't want more customers. Of course, ask for more customers. Who's the perfect customer? Ask for that customer. Ask for connections to them. You never know who knows who. I have a great story of a company in Vancouver that actually sold to Apple, but that happened because he started asking for connections to somebody at Apple. And then, but he wasn't doing that before. He was going to pitch competitions and not asking for anything. Until one day, his advisor was like, why aren't you asking for this? Why aren't you asking for, oh, well, nobody will know anybody at Apple. I don't bother asking. That's too big. And then the connection I have told this person, like, why don't you just try? You never know. What's it going to harm? What's it going to hurt? It's not going to hurt anything. Lo and behold, he started asking, and somebody in the audience at one of the events he was pitching at in Seattle said, uh, oh, my neighbor is like a top executive at Apple. What if I was to make you an introduction? We're good friends. And a couple of years later, they sold the company to Apple for over $300 million. So that's just an example. And I know that's not going to happen every day, but it is an example where you never know unless you ask. The worst that can happen is nothing happens or they say no. And that's okay. Always have an ask and be specific. So what I mean by that is it's the difference between, I'll give you an example because I'm an advisor, a Volition Advisor, coach. So if you went into an event and your ask was for an advisor, so a lot of times we'll hear this at our events. They'll tell their pitch and at the end they go, I'm looking for an advisor. But then you've got an audience of like 30, 60, 90 people, and most of them are sitting there going, what kind of advisor? I know lots of people. Maybe this person? I don't know. I know a lot of people that could be, but it's too many options, and I don't know if it's the right one. I don't know if it'd be a good fit, so I'm not going to bother because it's too much work. It's too much thinking about it. Difference being is if you can come in and say, I'm looking for a business advisor who can advise on this. I'm looking for a marketing advisor. I'm looking for an advisor who can help with financials and projections. I'm looking to scale my sales, but I don't have experience of that. So I'm looking for a sales advisor. If you can be really specific about it, now somebody in the audience can go, oh, I know somebody. There's so-and-so that is like, they have tons of experience and actually it's industry relevant. I'm going to make them a connection, right? And now it's a lot more specific and people will take action. That's the important part, call to action. People will take action when they have that specific call to action. So that's what you want to provide. Now, at the end, people will say, usually to me, whenever I teach a class, usually a question that would always come up would be, but what about the deck? How do I build a deck? What does that look like, right? Do I do it in Google Slides? Do I do it in PowerPoint? Do I do it nowadays in Canva? Which honestly, a couple of years ago, never would have been something that would come up. But now, which one do I do it to? My answer to you is that, as I will tell my students where I teach at a couple of colleges, often I'll tell them, I don't really care how you do it, just that you get it done. In this same sense, this is kind of similar to that. So it doesn't matter to me which one you choose. You can do it in any one of those. My recommendation at the end would be to convert your final file to PDF, because then you know that no matter what forum you go to, any situation you're in, you know that it will not lose its formatting. Now, we have had a lot of successful cases with Canva recently, but there's some slide transitions that sometimes don't work. Technology is a weird thing. Why I say this is that, honestly, there's a lot of angel forums and stuff that are very old school and not great with technology. Don't go to an angel forum expecting it to play a video or any kind of audio, honestly. Most of them don't have powerful enough speakers. Most of them don't have speakers at all. I would actually never recommend having a video in your pitch unless you can really make it work and it's short and concise. Really, this brings me to the point of that you, in a pitch, are the star of the show. You're the star. The deck is your supporting actor. One thing you might even notice about the deck I'm using now, not a lot of words, a little bit of use of pictures. It's just enough text, in my opinion, I hope. Feedback I've received is it's just enough text to give you a sense of what we're talking about, what the subject matter is. It's a guide even just for me to follow. One of the things I'll tell you right now, a little secret between us, I'm not scripted. I have a narrative that I'm following with this presentation. So I don't have to necessarily memorize anything. I can go based on what I know. That's exactly what I'm trying to teach you to be able to do with your pitches. Now, yeah, I'm practiced, but that comes with your pitches as well. practice makes perfect, as they say, in Cub Scouts and all that stuff. So, practice makes perfect, and that's exactly where we're at now. Is I've done this many times, so I don't have to have the script necessarily, but that's because I also have a structure that I'm following, and I know what the narrative is. So in this case, you're the star of the show. Your deck is your supporting actor. So if you have your company and your deck is behind you, so to speak, or beside you if it's virtual, in this case, then really the things that should be showing shouldn't be taking away from you. Because if people are reading, they're not listening. That's just a human thing. They can't do two things at once, kind of thing. So if people are reading, they're not listening to you, right? So what you want to do is have a deck that provides them quick and easy to view and understand visuals, brief bits of text that it's almost like you're using text as a visual, as a representation of what you're talking about, that just supports what you're saying, right? The memorable key things that you might want them to pick up. I mean, we all know that most people are visual, right? So giving them visuals to attach to in terms of what you're talking about, right? That's the things they're going to remember at the end. So just remember that you are the star of the show, and your deck is your supporting actor. Now, some virtual pitch tips that I'll give you is that number one, you want to make sure that you come prepared. So, to your best ability, test. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't work out. Internet is a funny thing sometimes, especially with all this virtualness. But try to test out things beforehand. Don't try to, try not to arrive to an event and be like, oh, hold on, I got to pull up my deck. Like, especially when it's your turn to pitch, have your deck at the ready, have everything at the ready to go. Now, cast is great at our events. What we do, as well as we have a tech test beforehand, but don't expect that from every competition or every pitch event that you go to. Depends on the organization. You can't expect it. Some of them don't do tech tests at all. So try to test your own. Make sure you have your deck at the ready. Do any little edits and transitions and make sure everything's working beforehand. Um, you know, don't be afraid to use body language. You might have noticed that sometimes as I'm presenting, I'm not afraid to use my hands. And I've seen a lot of times that because people are in this seemingly box when they're presenting, it can be tough because you feel like you're confined to this box. So just remember that you're not really confined to that box. You can still be you if you use body language. It's still a great way to express, and you can get the message. Even a lot can be had through body language, and you have to remember, in a virtual environment, we're kind of missing that, right? Because in person, in a live audience, we can see a lot and get a lot of a sense through body language. You can actually sense people's passion and the connectivity to the story and all that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid to do that. And here's another one that we had recently. Actually, I should have noted this on here, but another one we had recently was somebody was pitching at one of our events, and they weren't using headphones like I am. And what they had their notebook, I guess, with maybe some notes or their pitch script or something in front of them. And they were using their laptop mic, and they kept fiddling with the pages and changing the pages beside the mic. So as they were pitching, it was like you could hear the paper. Try to realize your environment. I actually would say I would recommend highly that if you're in a pitch scenario where you want to make sure that everybody hears what you're saying, use headphones with a good mic. The reason being is that a lot of people don't realize that how these systems work, like Zoom, is it's active microphones. So it picks up the sound when you start making sound, and it'll actually cut out the other sound that's happening. So if there's another sound in the background, it'll cut out what you're saying. And so if you have a headphone mic, it actually works a little bit different because it's a constant active mic. So now you have a better chance that everything's coming through clearly, and you're not having any kind of issues with the computer mic. So just a little few tips to help you take advantage of the virtual environment that we're all kind of stuck in at the moment. So, in review, pitching is an opportunity to generate intrigue, secure a second conversation, and the structure helps you tick the boxes. The story helps you build trust and memorability. And remember, if you don't ask, you don't get. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, always have an ask, but be specific as to what you're asking for. I'm going to share these slides with Karen afterwards, but I would encourage you guys, just as an aspect of a little exercise to do based on what we talked about today, is there's a link in the slides here, as you can see, from 7/12 to 25/24. There's two pitches that happened during something called the Dreamforce competition at Salesforce's yearly conference. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. You'll recognize the judges. It's Mark Cuban, Chris Balzac, I think is his name, um, uh, uh, Will I Am from Black Eyed Peas, and Shahrzad Rafati, who is a famous CEO entrepreneur from Vancouver of a company called Broadband TV. And there's two pitches. You'll see the first one, the second one. And what's very interesting is that you'll be able to see the comparison contrast between a not so great pitch, what you thought might be a good pitch the first time you hear it, compared to a really good pitch, and how these judges break it down. And you'll hear a lot of the things that I've said in this class. So just a little exercise. I would just recommend have a little notebook next to you, take some notes, some things you pick up on. I think it's just a good little exercise to go through. And I mentioned earlier that I would have a little story for you. So I'm going to end off on that. So the little story I had for you was when I mentioned about stories and pitches and getting people's attention. And the one time that I've seen a check handed over to an entrepreneur at the end of a pitch. To set a scene, it was at a forum called Keiretsu Forum, which is a later stage angel investor forum that happens once a month in Vancouver. This was about 3 years ago, I think. Might have been 4. And essentially, to give you a view of the room, this was obviously pre-COVID, so the room, it's usually filled with older demographic. Not saying it's right, but it's usually more men than women. It is getting better over time, but at that point, it was probably about 80% men, older men. Most of them are retired doctors, physicians, professors, that kind of stuff, and people who have investable income or investable funds. So these are later stage companies that are looking to kind of do what's called a bridge round. So they've raised before, they're building up, and then also health tech companies that are kind of in later stages of trials and all that kind of stuff. So in comes a woman named Rebecca. So she comes in, and so to set the scene, she comes in and she starts. Hello, my name is Rebecca, and 2 years ago, my father passed away from a brain tumor. But it wasn't the brain tumor that my father passed away from. It was the following invasive surgeries that they had to do in order to get out the part of the brain that was affected that they didn't get the first time. And each additional invasive surgery increased the risk of oxygen loss and infection. As a 20-year health science, life science entrepreneur, I felt like there had to be a better way. This issue alone cost the US health sector $200 million per year. And so we at Blaze Bioscience have created a unique and proprietary solution using a unique form of scorpion venom. When injected into the affected area, highlights that area up to 98.89%. so that the doctors can remove most, if not all of it, the first time and reduce that risk so that other people, like my father, don't fall victim to the same issue. I've built an incredible team filled with people with PhDs. I myself have this, da 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 da. Da. I don't remember every piece about the team. And we're currently in phase 3 of clinical trials. We've raised $200,000 already of a $450,000 round. We have matching funds from the University of Seattle as well as the Bill Gates Foundation, and we're looking to complete the round within the next 2 weeks. The use of funds is to complete the clinical trials and eventually exit the company into big pharma within the next 2 to 3 years. If you would like to prevent your father or family member from suffering the same fate as mine, please join me today. And scene. Now, going into that, why I wanted to tell you about that was because it's a great example, and it's the one example where I've seen a check handed over at the end. She knew how to connect with the audience. She was the one that put in the dramatic pauses, not me. She did that. She knew her audience. She knew how to tell the story, the whole pitch of the story, but also you hear the little inherent things that she put in without having to say them implicitly, like legitimizing who she is with her experience and capabilities, her background, talking about a unique proprietary solution, now the unfair advantage. All these little components that made up an amazing pitch that at the end, in a very rare situation, people were like, I'm in. I'm writing a check right now. I'm in. She almost closed her round that day. It was an incredible sight to see. Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to be able to do that and that's going to happen all the time, but it's a great example of if you follow a structure, use a story, use the narrative, it can give you a great advantage. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Hopefully you learned something. Like I said, I'll supply the slides to Karen so you can follow this later. I also have a pitch building doc that I'll provide to Karen that you can use as a guide, or you can fill it in to build your pitch and presentation. But I really look forward to seeing you all in the future. If you'd like to work with me on a one-on-one case, my links are here. Please reach out to me. At the very least, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you. But I'm always looking forward to stay connected and help you in the future. So with that, thank you very much and appreciate your time. Good luck. I'm going to stop presenting and see if anybody has any questions. Is there any questions from anyone? You're welcome, by the way, Adele. Any questions at all, anyone? As Karen says, don't be shy. Always have an ask, I guess is what I said. There is one in the Q&A, but I can't see it for some reason. Oh, there we go. Kyle says, how would you handle the request for financials when you're in negotiations? We're talking about past the pitch now, which is fine. So handle the request for financials. Now, in all honesty, generally, I would say that I have nothing, my experience has been I have nothing to hide. As long as I'm confident about my financials, I would certainly make sure that I got help with them, made sure they were clear, concise. Now, realistically, financials, projections in themselves are really kind of a fluffy cloud. You can't really know for sure. They're a best guesstimate based on what you believe is going to happen, assuming everything goes according to plan. And in some cases, some people might have like a plan A, plan B, maybe even a plan C, and that's cool. But I would say as long as there's no reason to hide anything. At earlier stages, I don't think it's a big deal if your financials are put together, provide them. It's part of the due diligence process. Now, at very early stages, for earlier stage companies, a lot of times it's quite rare. A lot of investors won't even ask for that. But if they do, I see no reason to hide it. At later stages, and if you want to employ this at earlier stages, you can get them to sign um, a letter of intent, but usually that doesn't happen until later stages, because now you have more leverage. It's tough because at the beginning you don't really have as much leverage, so you sort of are trying to get the deal. So to get the deal, it kind of goes hand in hand with I've heard a lot of things before where entrepreneurs will say, "Oh, I'm not dealing with an investor until they sign an NDA," but a non-disclosure agreement for anybody who doesn't know. The reality is almost no investor will sign a non-disclosure agreement because it actually prevents them from doing what they exactly want to do, which is if they love the deal, they might want to tell other people. A lot of times investors will, especially angels, will go into investments in groups. They'll syndicate. They want to tell their friends, their golf buddies, their, whatever. I've had that before where I got one investor who then brought in four of his friends. It's very common in these cases, especially for early stage. So, you know, there's no reason to hide it. I would just get it done and over with. And a lot of times it's not going to necessarily mean a no. They might come back and say, oh, well, can you explain this? Or I'd like clarity on this, or this doesn't really make sense. And you might just have to go and fix something and come back later. A no doesn't always mean no. It might be a no, I need to know more. And now Kyle is saying, actually, I'm more speaking about negotiating with a specific client. Oh, but at the same time doing a pitch. Okay, I'm sorry. But I think you just answered it anyways. Sort of. I hope I did. Kind of. Must be kind of our project. Financials. Oh, if it was a client, though, I would never, ever share my financials with a client. It depends. I mean, there's some types of clients that you have to share your financials with, but it's usually like B2B enterprise type software. So, of course, I don't know about your company yet, Kyle, so I can't speak to that directly. I would say in most cases, I wouldn't share my financials with a client. Investors, yes. Clients, usually not. Hopefully, I answered that correctly. Any other questions? I'll let Karen decide when time is up.
Hi everyone. Yeah, if there's no more questions, we can wrap up. And as Paul said, I'll send you the slides and his other worksheet, and then I can also send out the recording of this. So I will hopefully get it out to you guys this afternoon, latest tomorrow morning. So yeah, if there's no other questions, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for being here. And thank you so much, Paul. Such a great session. I know I always learn a lot from you. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great day.
Oh, there is a question.
Oh,
if you want me to get to it
yeah,
really
no,
quickly.
do it.
From anonymous attendee. Is there ever a scenario where you could ask for both mentorship and networking? I would kind of suggest that those are sort of the same. Yes, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if you have a high need for both, for sure. I just try to keep it to one, but two is okay. I just try to usually say, not try. What I usually recommend is try to avoid having way too many, because I've seen situations before where there was one recently I saw, I think it was in November, where they had like 6 asks. So they were like, oh, we're looking for connections to customers like these. We're looking for connections to partners. We're looking for investor connections because we're raising a round in February. Like they had this long list of asks, and it's just too much, right? So, just call to action, one or two asks, a mentor and like a specific network. As long as you're really specific with it, I think it's fine, right? As long as you're not like, I'm looking for a mentor and and connections to network, right? Even with the mentor part, I might even be a bit more specific about that. If you're going to have a couple, where you might say, I'm looking for a mentor, I'm looking for connections to a mentor, but maybe tell me of like, just like if you were hiring an employee or dating, what would that profile look like, right? Because a mentor relationship is really a relationship between two people. It's usually an unpaid, should be an unpaid relationship. So, you know, what does that profile look like? They should. I'm looking for a mentor who has experience with this and works with, this, has this many years of experience. What does that look like? So yes, but just be as specific as you can is what I would recommend.
All right. Is that it? Does anyone else have any last questions? I'll wait like 10 seconds. Oh,
Is there another one?
yeah,
Oh,
there's one more.
Dusty has one. Yep. Go ahead, Dusty. How would you recommend pitching a technical topic? I find I have trouble narrowing down my facts. Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but I think what you're asking for is like with really technical solutions or products or services. Um, this is kind of going hand in hand with what I was talking about, where as entrepreneurs, it can be tough because we don't know we're not objective or subjective, right? Because this is our own thing. We're so deep in that for us, everything's important. I think that the thing to try to remember is that not everyone in the audience needs to know everything. So, what are just the high level um, general things to whet their appetite, the things that they really need to know about how it works, right? So, because I've heard before even where similarly where people will say, "Oh, but I have a thing that's patent pending, so I can't tell people about it because it's patent pending." Well, my answer to them will be, then don't tell me what the patent's about and what the secret sauce is. Just tell me in general what it does, right? What is the value that people are going to get out of it once they use this product or this service or whatever it is. So, you know, a lot of things can be very technical. Just try to do your best to sort of, for lack of a better term, dumb it down. I guess some people might say layperson terms. A great way that I've told other people is to test it with friends and family that don't know what you're building, um, and try to pitch it to them or explain it to them. And if they're like, "Oh yeah, I totally get it. Totally makes sense," or if they're like, "I have no clue what you're doing," um, at the same time, try to get a family or friend that doesn't know what you're doing but is honest with you, not somebody who's just like, "Oh, you're doing a great job, keep it up, I don't get it but yay." That's not really going to be helpful. You want critical feedback to help you improve. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. That's a tough one without me knowing exactly about the business. I believe Dusty is one of the competitors, I think. So I think I'm going to be doing pitch coaching with you. So I guess I'll learn more next week, I think. And I can maybe guide you a little bit more in that case.
Yeah, to all the Koonie Pitch contestants, yeah, with your one-on-one time with Paul, you can get deeper into all of this with him. So if you have more specific questions, you can always start asking them next week.
Indeed. Yes.
Awesome. Well, again, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Paul. And yeah, I think let's wrap up for today.
Okay.
And then yeah, if anyone has any questions after this, feel free to reach out to myself or Paul. Whatever you need, we'll get you the help you need. So thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.